Hi, Circle family. It's your girl, MJ. I'm just hopping on here really quick before the episode starts to extend my sincerest and most heartfelt thank you. On behalf of the Circle podcast, on behalf of Sudbury District Restorative Justice, on behalf of myself, Pina, and Jackie. Thank you for being here. You guys are the vibe, the energy, and the love behind this podcast. And we are so happy to see that you are loving these episodes just as much as we love making them for you. Before we dive into today's episode, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background on the topic we're going to be talking about today. Today, we are discussing VTRA and the VTRA Committee. So VTRA, VTRA, stands for Violent Threat Risk Assessment. And today we have the absolute pleasure of talking about what VTRA is, what they do, and how they're serving the youth here in Sudbury. We sit down with Anna Barsanti, who is a longtime friend of our agency, and she's going to give you guys all of the details about what VTRA is, what they do, and how they're helping create a brighter future for the community of Sudbury. If you have any questions or if you want to know more, you are more than welcome to find us anywhere online at RJ Sudbury. You can visit us online at www.sdrj.ca. And if you want to reach out, if you have any suggestions about a future episode of the podcast or wish to know more about this topic or topics we've talked about before, you are more than welcome to DM us on any of our socials or send us a good old-fashioned email. info@sdrj.ca. So sit back, relax, grab your favorite beverage, grab a snack, get comfy, and let's get into today's episode. Welcome, dear listeners, to another insightful episode of The Circle. I'm your host, MJ, and I'm here with Pina and Anna. And today we're diving deep into the essential topic that affects the safety and well-being of individuals and communities, Violence Threat Risk Assessment, VTRA. Joining us today is a distinguished guest who is at the forefront of this critical field, Anna Barsanti. Anna serves as the VTRA coordinator in Sudbury and has a wealth of experience in violence prevention and threat assessment. Anna, it is an absolute pleasure to have you with us today. How are you?
Well, I'm very, very good. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with the two of you. I always find you very inviting and kind and open to whatever it is that we have to share.
Well, we love having you in our meetings. I know Pina can speak to that too.
She's one of my favorite human beings on this earth by far.
It's like a mutual feeling. I love it.
Oh, look at us.
Anna is a longtime friend of our executive director, Jackie. She is a friend of mine and Pina's. She's worked with SDRJ and with us on many, many occasions, and she's always an absolute pleasure to have. So to get started, Anna, can you provide our audience with a brief overview of what VTRA is, what your role is, and why it's so important in today's world?
I sure can. So just for people to feel a little bit more comfortable, I know when you hear the term violence at risk assessment, you might get a little nervous or the words might be sort of uneasy. But the reality is that VTRA, which is actually assessment of risk to others, is a circle of care. It's the bringing together of community partners to work with an individual of concern who's on a pathway towards violence, and we want to support that individual and their families so that their baseline gets back to normal and that they're on a new path towards having a healthier, happier life. And in our community, we started in April 2010. We brought in Kevin Cameron, who is actually the creator of this process, and he also works very in the forefront with traumatic event systems, family assessment. And so he's done training in our community for that length of time. Our protocol, the first one was signed in 2011. We went from 13 community partners. We are now at 30 community partners. And we are parents, even parents will ask us to initiate a VTRA so that their child has this circle of care around them. It is embedded in our community along with the rapid mobilization table as a process that lets people know as an entire community, you are cared for.
I love that. I love the thought of having a circle of care, a circle of people around you to help you and lift you and guide you, especially as we've seen And some of the youth even that we work with, it almost feels like they don't have anyone. So being able to provide them this loving circle to help and heal is incredibly important. So it's clear that VTRA plays an absolutely crucial role in preventing potential threats and maintaining safety and taking care of these youth. Do you have some success stories or other examples of how VTRA has positively impacted in different settings, particularly in Sudbury?
Well, this has always been one of my favorite scenarios that occurred when we first started. There was a young person who was brought to our attention who had brought a weapon to school. And of course, the principal responded by initiating a VTRA. And the family came to the table, the young person came to the table. And one of the responses was that he couldn't be in school at that particular time until we had de-escalated, mitigated the risk. Once we did that, this family did everything that was recommended, and the school boards did everything that was recommended. And this young person continued his schooling, even though he couldn't go in this particular building. And then he wanted to transfer to another board. So we actually, with the recommendation, were able to transfer this young person to another board. And I remember when we closed the VTRA, I said to him, I said, "What did you learn from this?" And he turned to me and he said, "I learned that my parents loved me." And even when I tell people that story today, I still get the chills, because when a young person is out of balance and we end up doing this circle of care, sometimes they feel that there's nobody in their circle. And when you get to meet them, I don't get to meet them very often, but when you do, and there's a group of people that they don't know, and you can say, "We're all here for you," you can see that anxiety lowering. You can see that trust being built. And there are stories that young people disclose. If you're initiating a VTRA and they're disclosing, they're telling you, "We want help." When a parent says, "Yes, I want the VTRA process," they're telling you, "We want help." And our job is to listen to what works for them and how do we help them and support them in moving forward. So I would say in this year alone, we have had 103 VTRAs initiated, of which most of them are closed. Most of them are closed. Some of them are, I will be honest with you, sometimes we don't move forward because we don't get consent. We cannot move forward without consent, and that's okay, because eventually they will come to the place to trust. When they say no, there's other stuff behind. And when the time comes, they will say yes, and we will be there to support them on that pathway.
I really liked what you said about showing them that at least somebody cares, because I think that's what a lot of our youth in our community is. They're so desensitized to the things going on around them, and because they're so desensitized, they're not taking things seriously. So when parents may show that they're caring or are trying to steer them in a good direction to the kids, the parents aren't listening to them, they're not understanding them. So I always say, if we're able to show those kids that at least one person in their community cares enough to make sure that they're, listening to them, but also steering them on the right path, and they're able to have that conversation with one individual, that one individual can do the rest and can help. We can't do it all, sorry, but can connect to the rest. Does that make sense? And so being those people that, that kid, you're that one person that kid knows cares about them, is so rewarding. And B, you watch these kids succeed, just like you said, and you get so proud of them. And they're like your little, I call them my kids, because I get to watch them succeed just as you did. And it's phenomenal. However, like you said, sometimes there are families that don't consent. So in your experience, what are some of the common misconceptions or other challenges that people often have about implementing VTRA into their organizations, communities, and even their families?
Well, I think sometimes what happens is when families say no, I'm going to suggest to you that they've had experiences with the system and they don't trust the system. that they've been hurt by the system, whether it's from their childhood, whether it's in adulthood, whether sometimes they get a sense that you're going to judge me. One of the things that I can assure you, I came from education for 30 years. I'm doing this work. I have yet to meet a parent or guardian that did not love their child. It's to recognize they are doing the best they can with what they have. And if they're in front of you, they're asking you for your hand up, not hand out, hand up. And so it's our job to listen. So sometimes their experience says, I don't trust you. The other part is, imagine being a parent and finding out that your child or guardian, your child is they want to do a violence threat risk assessment. So we're changing that to ARTO, which is assessment of risk to others, to soften the language. So you hear the word violence, and all of a sudden, your heart's beating, you're hurting, and so they're not hearing this is a circle of care. They're hearing, oh Lord, what's going on? What's happening? And again, when I say to you, eventually they will come around. Those that want the assistance is because sometimes their young person gets to that place, right? And then they say, well, we need help. We need to come back. We need to go to this table so that someone can guide us. Because again, professionals are done when the process is done. It's the family that is still there for that young person, whatever the family looks like. We've got families where children are being raised by grandparents, great aunts, great uncles, other people in the family, guardians, right? Ex-girlfriends raising the children of their partner. So there's a lot of loving people in this community raising children that are biologically not theirs. And again, the biological parents are doing the best they can wherever they're at, and they need their support so that everyone can come back together and be the best that they can be in. And the VTRA process, to me, is one of those places that we help. We're not the solution to everything. We're just helpers.
And we're more there to hold the hands and connecting the hands together. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I wanted to go back to what you said about the one caring adult. Research has proven it takes one caring adult to make a difference. And sometimes, are you ready for this? It's one caring statement that if the child or the adult hears is the paradigm shift. So just keep being positive, keep being helpful, keep being present, because you don't know when your positivity or your messaging will be heard and processed. So it's really important what you said, Pina, for all of us to remember. And by the way, I'm not the caring adult for every human being any more than anybody else is, but there is somebody who's the caring adult for that particular individual, who's the individual of concern at that time.
Exactly. Now, I know you talked a little bit about Kevin Cameron, and I know this may not be one of our questions, MJ, but I have a question for her that I would like her to share to the audience. Why was VTRA, why did we say, oh, this is needed? Like, yeah, I hear it from adults all the time that, you know, things weren't as bad when they were younger, and so on, or mental health issues weren't as predominant when they were younger, and so on. So why now? Why do we need VTRA in our communities, and why is it something that was created?
Okay, so I think it's kind of funny that you would say that, because I'm older than you two, and I can say, oh, it was better when I was a kid. The reality is, before we get any further, life is good now, even though everything's going on. Think of all of the amenities that we have. Yes, there are people that are struggling and have problems. I'm not denying that, but I don't want people to think, geez, if we was born in the 1900s, things would be so much better. We didn't know about all this stuff before. So when Kevin Cameron came, and how this started was Columbine, 1999. Okay, so in 1999, Columbine happened. He was a Canadian, and he was in Tabor, and then Tabor's shooting happened in Canada, and he was part of the traumatic response for the Tabor shooting. And when he did that, he then got seconded by the government, because it was always the traumatic response after an event. So he worked with the FBI, the RCMP, and governments to say, wait a minute, why are we always doing this after something happens? So it's important for people to know the traumatic event systems strategies came first. And then they said, we need to find out what's happening beforehand so we can see, because he said, violence is an evolutionary process. People don't wake up one day and all of a sudden do the horrible things that they do. There is a process, and if we pay attention, we could pick up on the clues and then come together and interrupt it. So when Kevin Cameron came, it was actually Mark Gauthier, who was the superintendent at the time of Grand Nord, and he had taken his team to Ottawa. So the French board had gone to Ottawa and got trained by Kevin Cameron in level 1 VTRA, and Mark Gauthier said, we need to bring this back to our board. And it just so happened that serendipitously, I was now working for Greater Sudbury Police Service, and Dean Brownlee was the SRO at the time. And they were having this conversation. And guess what also happened at that time? The Safe Schools Act. So the Safe Schools Act came into play. So that tells you that things were happening in schools back in the day.
Yeah.
And then funding came. So the Greater Sudbury Police Service was able to apply for funding to bring Kevin Cameron to our community. And so in April 2010, Kevin Cameron came and he spoke to a room of 500 people for a full day. We got as many community leaders as we could get in the room to hear his messaging. There were students, there were workers, there was a wide range, but predominantly the community leaders, and people said, yep, this makes sense. We had 2 level 1 trainings after that. And then we built our protocol from there. And I will say that everybody also talks about COVID, but a lot of the things that are manifesting now were actually had already started to manifest before COVID. And of course, COVID had us isolated and there was a response. And now we are seeing, I would say, an escalation in violence, an escalation in weapons, an escalation because people are just discombobulated. And the difference is at least we have a process. Right. So we're not stopping everything, but at least we have a process that we can stop, and we will never know how many we stop. Right. The news doesn't monitor, well, they did a VTRA process and that stopped that. But they do monitor when something happens. And then unfortunately, last week we had 2 serious events, one in our own northeast region and one close to the Canadian border in Maine, which tells you that we still have lots of hurting people. So I'm not condoning what they do, but what was in place? Why is this still happening? Why are people hurting? And VTRA just happens to be one process. RMT happens to be one process. Mobile crisis is another process. None of these things existed back in the day. So yeah.
That's awesome. You mentioned about how our community alone has suffered through crisis. And I know specifically, even from a year ago, right? We've had at least 3, 4 now major events in our community that have directly affected the well-being of our students, well-being of our community support staff, the emergency response. What hope do you have for our community? What are your hopes for our community in not resolving, but repairing the harm from these traumatic events?
Okay, so
that's a really tough question. I'm so sorry. It just came off the top of my head.
Isn't she wonderful? Cut that part out. Okay,
because
so
I just know that a lot of people in our community are struggling to see what's going on behind the scenes, right? And that's not necessarily for them not opening their eyes, but it's also from us working behind the scenes and working one together, right? So it's very hard to see action for individuals who aren't necessarily very well connected in our community services, but well connected in our community people.
Okay, so that's actually a very interesting question, because as you know, there's a war in Ukraine, there's a war in the Middle East, and it's a very confusing war for lots of individuals, and it also impacts on our community, right? Because we have people with roots in those particular parts of the world. And we have people trying to do the right thing so that people can feel connected, so that people know that there's some action. So I grapple in my mind and I say, what can I do? So what can I do as an individual that's going to help to shift? So, and you, both of you know that those of us that work together do a lot of little things every single day to make sure that somebody's life's a little bit better. So that's one way of answering your question, Pina, that each one of us has a responsibility if we are capable at that moment, because sometimes I think caregivers have to take a step back. Today's not my day to be supporting you, but I'm going to call on Pina or MJ and they're going to step up so that I can get myself back to being grounded. That's number one. Our community is the mayor called together the Greater Together and had community leaders as to how can we be better in a better place to welcome newcomers. And newcomers, by the way, don't necessarily mean they come from another country. Newcomers are people new to Sudbury. Anybody who's coming here, how do we make them feel that this is a place that they want to stay? The other part is the number of individuals that care about the people that are downtown, that are struggling, the opioid. There's an opioid summit that's going to be coming in December. So it's for people in the broader community to recognize there are lots of things happening in our community where people are taking it one step at a time. So yes, I know there are horrible things happening, but could you imagine if we didn't have these processes in place? Because I'm a believer, like when I was in a classroom, if I was doing something in the classroom with one student and I was able to de-escalate, the rest of the class observed it, it's a de-escalation. How I respond to inappropriate behavior is observed by everybody else that's around me. And if they see that I handle myself well, that we were able to come to a resolution, everything goes back to where it's peaceful. The other part is, and it's interesting because when the mayor came on the other day and talked about the buying of the land, so you don't stop progress. So we're going to buy this property, we're going to create, we're going to do these things. So it's a full on moving forward and not collapsing because so much is not occurring. The one thing that I would like for people to do is look for the good in what's happening. So find someone that you can vent with privately, but when you're in a broader group, have the conversation about what are we doing well. So the other thing that I wanted to bring up is that the VTRA process started off initially to address that violence threat risk assessment, that pathway towards violence. Because we have been together for so long, like we're in our 14th year, we know each other, like we're friends, right? I can call you up and say, Pina, I'm kind of stuck on this young individual. What do you think? So we do things outside the circle of VTRA. Yesterday, I sent you on a message. We have a young person that's struggling with who can I reach out to? So all of a sudden, the VTRA table has become this resource for each other to find out other ways. We're finding the gray area. We're not black and white anymore. It's what's the gray area? What can I do outside my mandate that's going to support someone else? So if we're successful in supporting someone else, you know what? They walk away a little bit happier. They're carrying themselves a little bit better. Their energy moves out into the community and other people feel it. So that's why I think I'm hopeful, and that's why I think it's working, is that you have to know your micro lens and you have to know your macro lens and you have to know your limits. What can I do so I maintain my personal health so I can continue to move forward?
And if I can't do it, who do I know can?
Exactly.
Correct.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's what I love about VTRA. Like, just like Anna said, that literally yesterday she sends out a mass email, and within 30 minutes everybody responds. And that's not the first time that has happened. I have been at like presentations at committees, stuff like that, and Anna's sending out emails during this meeting, and all of a sudden everybody now at the table is having that discussion. Okay, what can we do for this? How can we support this? Next thing you know, Anna's got 30 emails from all of us being like, what about this? What about this? What about this? So even if we can't do it ourselves, we know people who can. And that is what I love about Sudbury is that we are so connected. Like our social services, it's not fighting against one another. That's not what we're here to do. It's here to present these individuals who are marginalized and experiencing challenges in our systems and in our community and saying, okay, what next?
Exactly. We see you. We're here. Let's
Yes.
help.
Right.
Jay, that was beautiful. We see you. That is so critical for people to know that they are not invisible. And I just wanted to share one of the stories with that Pina's talking about. I sent out an email. Somebody sent me an email about a family. I sent it out, and honest to God, within 30 minutes, people went from not having a home to having a home. And a person was, I'm out of town. And I thought, oh, okay. But what, you know what? So, but they sent it on to someone else. And then that someone else did it and said, no worry, everything's taken care of. In 30 minutes.
It's
Like that was
amazing.
on my end. That's not like there was time before, but as soon as it gets to us at the VTRA table, and it happens to be me, but it could be Pina, it could be MJ. We have this interconnection of circles where people can find, and we're limited in resources. So the fact that we can find them also tells me why we're necessary is the regular folk don't know the system. They don't know how to navigate the system. If you come from education, you can navigate education. If you don't come from education and you didn't have the best experience in school, do you think you can navigate the school system?
hard pass. No, not a chance.
Right?
No, it's
I
difficult.
have information to share with you about this later on.
Oh,
Yes.
But just to go to our final question we've got for you, Anna, what advice would you offer to our listeners who want to learn more about VTRA or potentially implement it in their organization or community?
okay, so if anybody wanted more information around VTRA, you certainly can connect with me, VTRA coordinator at gmail.com. And I will get back to you. If you're a parent, you certainly can talk to the school administration. If you're curious and you want to learn more, every organization, the 30 community partners, have a fair notice, which would mean if you're a client there, you could read the fair notice, get a little information from them. And I will say that Sudbury has received some inquiries from other communities to help them set it up. I will also say that we are the first community to start off with all 4 school boards and 2 post-secondary on our original protocol. That was unheard of back in the day. We were the first community to actually have a community VTRA coordinator. So we've had people across the country calling and asking, so what does that look like and how do you set it up? So as much as we have, we are still struggling because we're new. Like, I want you to think about it. We're 14 years old. Anybody know a 14-year-old? Okay.
I do. I have a nephew who's 14.
All right. So
I know too many of them.
The 14-year-olds are still growing and learning. Right. Yeah. So actually, Kevin Cameron, I think, has been doing this work since 1999, since 2000. So it's a little over 20 years old, and we're 14. We're a teenager. So again, we're going to have blips, and that's okay to have blips because we're willing to grow and learn.
And listen, I'm 20 years old and I still don't know what the heck I'm doing. So I don't blame an organization for being 20 years old and don't know what the heck they're doing.
I'm pushing 30, Pina. I'm telling you, it doesn't stop.
We already know I'm 70 and I'm still learning. It does not end.
I love it. Well, so Anna is this like phenomenal woman. Like the amount of stuff that this woman takes on in 30 minutes, like alone, is insane, let alone a full works week. Like she is answering from arenas, she's answering from other freaking Ottawa, Toronto. Like you text her, she's somewhere random, but she's gonna answer you and she's gonna respond to you and make sure something's done about it. And I just like, I cannot thank you enough for the amount of amazing work that you are doing in our community. And you're so behind the scenes doing it. Yes. Right? Everybody knows your name and knows how I've never met a person who's ever had like anything to say about you other than you are freaking phenomenal. And
Yep.
like God sent, I tell you.
We are grateful for everything that you help us with every single day, Anna. Even me being more on the communication side. When I first started at SDRJ as a placement student, I was getting to know VTRA and I was getting to understand, and your name kept coming up over and over. I'm like, I need to meet this woman. I need to meet her. And now, fast forward almost 2 years that I've been with SDRJ, I know, crazy.
Oh,
It's like I can't imagine our life without you in it. So
God, no.
thank you for everything that you do. And on behalf of the youth who may not have a chance to say thank you for giving these kids a chance. They deserve it. They really do.
They do. And thank you for coming on our podcast today.
Yes,
well,
thank you for joining us in the circle today, Anna.
I love the circle. Okay, so can I just say something about you guys?
I guess so.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so for the rest of you out in the community, if you have any idea, Sudbury District Restorative Justice is a very small organization with very few people, and they change the lives of countless individuals, and they work with all the community partners in ways that the rest of us don't know. They talk about me being behind the scenes. I really want people to pay attention to restorative justice, because listen to the word restorative justice. They get that people can have good lives and they know how to get them to come together. So that's why I love working with you, because we're on the same page.
We all have the same mission, vision, mandate, all that fun stuff. Thank you for everyone for listening to this week's episode of The Circle. If you want to listen to more episodes or find more resources, you can find us online at www.sdrj.ca. Thanks, guys.